When night falls and the silence of the house seems to echo louder than any sound, have you ever wondered if you're truly alone? Hello, dear friend. Today I want to speak directly to your heart about something many of us feel but few dare to mention: the loneliness that comes with advanced age. Loneliness in maturity is real. It arrives slowly, like a silent tide, first occupying small spaces in your routine, then filling entire rooms of the house where laughter and conversations once lived. Sometimes it manifests in a solitary dinner, other times in the empty pillow beside you, or in the telephone that rarely rings with the voice of someone dear. But even in the deepest loneliness, there exists a consolation that transcends the present moment and connects us with something greater. If this kind of reflection touches your heart, please leave your like and subscribe to the channel. We're building a community where no one needs to feel alone on this journey of maturity. And today I want you to share in the comments, what was the moment when loneliness taught you something precious about yourself that you never would have discovered amid the noise of life? Clive Staples Lewis, affectionately known as C.S. Lewis, was a man who intimately knew the pain of loneliness. Having lost his mother during childhood, experienced the horrors of World War I, and later suffered the devastating loss of his wife Joy Davidman to cancer, Lewis developed a deep and nuanced understanding of human loneliness. For him, we live, in fact, in a world starved for solitude, silence, and privacy. What a fascinating paradox, isn't it? In a society that constantly pushes us toward connection, toward noise, toward filling every minute with activities and distractions, Lewis invites us to see the precious value of contemplative silence. It's as if he were telling us that perhaps part of the anguish we feel in solitude comes not only from the absence of others, but from our inability to be truly present for ourselves. When we reach 70, 80 years, this silence is often not a choice, but a circumstance imposed by life. Children have followed their own paths, spouses may have departed, youth friends have become increasingly rare. Family gatherings that once filled the house with voices now happen less frequently. The world seems to follow its accelerated course, while our days gain a different rhythm, more paused, sometimes lonely. However, Lewis invites us to see this space, not as a painful absence, but as a different presence. In his work, Surprised by Joy, he describes moments of solitary contemplation as opportunities to encounter profound truths. He understood that loneliness can be a sacred temple, where we can finally hear our own soul, our deepest thoughts that had been muffled by decades of noise and responsibilities. Have you noticed how, in moments of complete solitude, certain memories return with surprising clarity? Memories that had been dormant for years suddenly manifest vividly. The smell of bread your mother made on Sunday mornings, the sound of your father's laughter, the touch of your children's small hands when they were little, the first look exchanged with who would become the love of your life. It's as if the silence allows our mind to finally organize the photo album of life, highlighting precious details that everyday noise had covered up. Lewis wrote in his book, A Grief Observed, after his wife's death, "Her absence is like the sky, spread over everything." This phrase beautifully captures how loneliness can be both an emptiness and a presence that permeates everything. It's in these moments of absolute silence that we can rediscover not only the memory of those we loved, but parts of ourselves that were forgotten along the way, dormant talents, postponed dreams, deep thoughts that never had space to flourish in the turmoil of active life. Lewis also offers us a comforting vision about friendship, especially valuable for those facing loneliness in advanced age. He wrote in The Four Loves, Friendship is born at that moment when one person says to another, "What, you too? I thought I was the only one." This simple observation carries a powerful truth for us who have passed 70. Age is not a barrier to deep connections. In fact, it might be precisely the catalyst for them. Mature hearts often recognize affinities more quickly and wisely. Free from the social and professional pressures of youth and middle age, we can relate from a more authentic, more truthful place. A conversation on a park bench, a casual encounter at the local library, an exchange of ideas in a volunteer group. Any of these moments can be the beginning of a friendship that, although late, carries a depth impossible in the earlier phases of life. Even now in your life, there exists the luminous possibility of finding someone who shares your experiences, your values, your memories of a world that no longer exists. These connections, when they happen in advanced age, have a particular sweetness. They're like finding a traveler who has walked similar paths to yours, who recognizes the landscapes you've seen, who understands without words the joys and pains that have marked your journey. Perhaps you have lost your life companion after decades together. The empty space in bed, the silence at meals, the absence of that familiar voice can create a type of loneliness that seems insurmountable. Lewis deeply understood this pain when he wrote in A Grief Observed, "The pain now is part of the happiness then. That's the deal." What moving wisdom! The loneliness that comes from loss is, in fact, the other side of the love we lived. It's the price we pay for having loved deeply, for having built a life intertwined with another person. Each room in the house that now seems to echo the silence also holds the echo of shared laughter, heated discussions, dreams built together, sweet reconciliations. Each memory that brings tears to your eyes is a testimony to the richness that existed in your life. Each name you pronounce with longing is proof that your heart knew true love. Lewis helps us understand that absence hurts precisely because presence was precious, was transformative, was real. And in this understanding, even if it doesn't eliminate the pain, there is profound consolation. Lewis was a man of deep faith, and this colored his vision of loneliness and suffering. In The Problem of Pain, he wrote, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. In moments when the silence of the house seems deafening, when the absence of loved voices creates an almost palpable void, perhaps there exists a softer voice trying to reach your heart. For many of us who age, faith becomes an increasingly present consolation. Prayers murmured in the silence of night, reading sacred texts that have gained new meaning with maturity, contemplating a sunset with gratitude for another day lived. These experiences can fill the silence with a transcendent presence. One doesn't need to be religious in the traditional sense to feel that something greater accompanies us, even in the darkest nights. Lewis suggests that these moments of apparent abandonment may be precisely when we are most spiritually accompanied. One of the greatest gifts Lewis left us was his unwavering belief in the power of imagination as company and consolation. "We read to know we are not alone," he wrote. What a liberating truth for those facing long days of silence. A book can be more than a distraction. It can be a faithful companion in long, silent afternoons. Lewis, creator of the enchanted world of Narnia, believed that stories allow us to temporarily inhabit other lives, other worlds. Through reading, we can sit at the table with characters who become friends. We can visit times and places we would never know otherwise. We can expand our understanding of the human condition far beyond the physical limitations that age may impose. When you open a beloved novel, revisit a poem you know by heart, or immerse yourself in an inspiring biography, you are inviting other minds into your living room. Physical solitude remains, but spiritual and intellectual solitude dissipates. Imagination, that wonderful faculty that remains vibrant even when the body weakens, can populate our inner world with comforting presences. Lewis also had much to say about love that persists even in physical absence. In The Four Loves, he observed, "Affection is responsible for 9/10 of whatever solid and durable happiness there is in our lives. Love is not simply a fleeting emotion or dependent on constant presence. It remains alive in small remembrances, in the album of yellowed photographs you browse through on Sunday afternoons, in the handwritten cake recipe that preserves your mother's handwriting, in your father's wristwatch that still marks the hours on the nightstand, in the garden that you and your spouse planted together, and that continues to bloom spring after spring. When you sit at the table and instinctively look at the empty chair where your companion used to sit, what you feel is not just absence, it's the continuity of a love that transcended physical presence, the habit of preparing coffee exactly as they liked it, the impulse to comment on the news to someone who is no longer there to respond, the reflex of saving something to show later that would have made the loved one smile. These small gestures are testimonies of a love that continues to live, continues to be available, continues to be real. One of Lewis's most profound and revolutionary statements is found in his sermon, The Weight of Glory. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. What a transformative perspective for someone who sometimes feels invisible in old age. In a society that frequently marginalizes the elderly, that treats them as if their contribution had already ended, Lewis reminds us that each human being carries an eternal dignity, an incalculable value. Your life, my friend, your unique story, your experiences accumulated over decades are extraordinary. The value of your existence does not diminish with age, nor with the absence of constant company. The wrinkles that mark your face are maps of a unique journey. The calluses on your hands are medals of honor for work accomplished. The wisdom in your eyes is an inestimable treasure. Even on days that seem empty, on mornings when the weight of loneliness seems harder to carry, there exists a purpose in your presence in this world. As Lewis wrote in The Screw-Tape Letters, humans always imagine themselves called to extend a great kingdom, yet the great moment is always the present moment. Your attentive presence, your silent prayer, your kindness to the mail carrier, your smile for the neighbor's child, these small daily gestures carry eternal meaning. Your accumulated wisdom is a treasure that can illuminate the path for others. Your stories of difficult times overcome, of unexpected joys, of painfully learned lessons, carry teachings that no book can transmit with the same authenticity. In a world that runs increasingly faster, your ability to be present, to observe patiently, to reflect deeply is a precious gift. Loneliness after 70 can be a frequent visitor, sometimes an unwanted guest that never seems to leave. But Lewis teaches us that it need not define our experience. It can be a teacher, revealing aspects of ourselves we would never have discovered in constant company. It can be an opportunity for inner growth, allowing us to develop spiritual self-sufficiency. It can be a sacred space of encounter with our deepest truths. C.S. Lewis wrote in Mere Christianity, "Imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps, you can understand what he is doing. He is getting the drains right and stopping the leaks in the roof and so on. You knew that those jobs needed doing, and so you are not surprised, but presently he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably and does not seem to make any sense. But presently he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably and does not seem to make sense. What on earth is he up to? The explanation is that he is building quite a different house from the one you thought of, throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage, but he is building a palace. He intends to come and live in it himself. Perhaps the loneliness you experience now is part of that process of inner reconstruction. Perhaps the empty spaces are being prepared to receive a fullness we cannot yet imagine. As Lewis suggests, perhaps what seems like demolition is actually preparation for something more grandiose. You who have accompanied me on this journey today, who perhaps have found an echo for your own feelings of loneliness in the words of C.S. Lewis, know that you are not truly alone. There is a community here. There are people who care. There are shared stories that connect us across time and space. As Lewis would remind us, you are unique, necessary, and deeply valuable. Loneliness may visit your home, may sit at your table, may accompany you on your walks, but it need not permanently dwell in your heart. The words of C.S. Lewis, this man who knew both joy and deep pain, remind us that even in the most silent moments, there is beauty to be discovered, meaning to be created, and a loving presence that transcends our understanding. You are not alone. You are loved, needed, and extraordinarily important. As Lewis wrote in The Chronicles of Narnia, "Courage, dear heart. There is a path ahead. There is light even in the darkest days. There is company even in the moments of greatest loneliness. Until our next meeting, carry this peace in your heart. And remember, your value has not diminished with age. On the contrary, like a fine wine, you have become more precious with
the passing years.